Stalking is a disturbing pattern of behaviour which causes immense distress. It typically involves relentless attempts to contact the victim, to closely monitor their activities, as well as to invade their privacy. Unfortunately though, this unpleasant behaviour often escalates, and in the worst cases it involves deliberate intimidation or threats, as well as outright violence, or even the death of the victim. However, whilst the media typically portrays stalkers as being strangers, in reality most stalkers are in fact someone that the victim knows. This video is all about stalkers, their underlying psychology, as well as what is likely to be going wrong within their brains, in order to generate their disturbing and frightening behaviour. Most stalking cases involve men stalking women, with estimates sitting at 87% of stalkers being male and just 13% of stalkers being female. And whilst a minority of male stalkers target outright strangers as a kind of rehearsal for a sexually motivated attack, other stalkers more typically target acquaintances as a kind of unwanted form of courtship, or to punish a love interest who has rejected them. However, the most common type of stalker is a man who has been rejected by his spouse, and who stalks her in his attempt to maintain a relationship, as well as to frighten her into submission. But interestingly, these different stalker types share a similar underlying psychology in the form of an insecure attachment style, which within stalkers typically presents itself as being either lacking or obsessive. Those who have a total lack of emotional attachment to the victim tend to be male stalkers, and specifically, male stalkers who perceive their victims as being interchangeable, and who target multiple women throughout their lives. These stalkers are therefore labelled as being predatory stalkers, and are motivated primarily by sexual or sadistic motives, and have an avoidant attachment style, which is characterised by discomfort or disinterest in emotional intimacy. These types of stalkers are frequently considered to be psychopaths, and are often diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Fortunately though, the predatory type of stalker is in the minority. Instead, the majority of stalkers tend to have an obsessive attachment to a specific victim, and in this they desire to form a romantic relationship with that person, or alternatively, they desire to maintain an existing relationship. Here, these stalkers experience an intense desire for intimacy within the context of a relationship, alongside a heightened sensitivity to rejection or to real or imagined abandonment, which is called an anxious attachment style. This attachment style can manifest itself either during the pursuit, during a relationship, or once a relationship has ended. This kind of obsessive attachment occurs in both male and female stalkers, although female stalkers tend to stalk acquaintances to create a relationship, whilst male stalkers tend to stalk ex-partners who try to end the relationship. Here, the risk of violence escalates with the degree of intimacy that was shared within the relationship, and is the most fatal form of stalking. And interestingly, in contrast to predatory stalkers, who often have a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder, these obsessive stalkers instead often have a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, or less commonly, a diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. Here, both borderline and narcissistic personality disorders feature an unstable sense of self, unstable relationships, as well as the phenomenon of splitting. Splitting is a dichotomous black and white style of thinking, and this form of cognitive distortion can lead people with these disorders to form inconsistent and extreme perceptions of their loved ones, causing them to rapidly alternate between viewing their loved one as being all good or all bad, with limited nuance in between. This may explain why both stalkers and domestic abusers are able to both idealise and dehumanise the victim on a regular basis, thereby fueling the cycle of abuse and domestic violence. Here, cluster B personality disorders of which borderline, narcissistic and antisocial personality disorders are all categorized, are therefore identified as underlying a huge number of stalkers, and thereby accounts for this stalking behavior, which is characteristically driven by narcissism and insecure attachment. But now let's take a look at how lust and love affect the brain, including in people who do not engage in stalking. Feelings of lust, romantic attraction, and love can be highly enjoyable experiences. Here, each of these feelings are generated by different brain systems. Firstly, whenever you see someone that you're sexually attracted to, the levels of sex hormones in your brain elevates, namely the hormones called testosterone and estrogen within men and women, which together ignites libido and increases sexual pursuit, as well as receptivity to sexual advances. This therefore forms the most elementary level of sexual behaviour and courtship. However, whenever you see someone that you are also romantically attracted to, a key neurotransmitter called dopamine increases within your brain, which is an important brain chemical for the experience of pleasure and reward, and which drives you to seek even more contact with that person. This has been called the early stage romantic love period, and here key regions of your brain's reward system are knocked into overdrive, regions which include your ventral tegmental area, caudate nucleus, and ventral striatum, all of which happen to be the same areas that are hijacked if you become addicted to drugs like cocaine or heroin. Therefore, this can cause the person to become heavily fixated on their love interest. However, the experience of attraction and early romantic love are not just pleasurable and exciting experiences, but are also stressful ones as well. This is because both attraction and early romantic love also activate your brain's fear and aggression center, a region called the amygdala. Here, the amygdala regulates the release of the stress hormone known as cortisol, and when the amygdala is activated during the experience of normal lust or early romantic love, it therefore causes the release of high levels of cortisol, which consequently triggers a stress response called love-induced hypercortisolemia. And in addition to hypercortisolemia, early romantic love and lust also cause an increase in the neurotransmitter called norepinephrine, which is a neurotransmitter that acts as the brain's adrenaline. And incidentally, this rise in cortisol and norepinephrine is what happens in the brain during fight or flight behaviours, and is the reason why your body might nervously shake in the presence of someone that you desire, or alternatively, during some kind of conflict. Here, the amygdala itself is formed of various subregions, some of which appear to be specialised for generating aggressive behaviours, whilst others seem to be specialised for generating anxious behaviours. Altogether, this may therefore explain why the experience of initial attraction and early romantic love, within both courtship and early romantic relationships, can feel both euphoric and stressful, as well as addictive and obsessive, for even the most well-adjusted amongst us. However, it is fortunate that most people's brains do not allow this activity to continue indefinitely. After a couple has experienced a year or two of dating, the late stage romantic love period begins. Here there is a transition to a new normal, in which a strong romantic union and pair bond forms. This late stage romantic love period is generated by a range of different mechanisms, which effectively serve to shut down the stress response. Here the stress response is replaced with feelings of calmness and security, while still maintaining the reward response whenever you see your loved one. This is achieved through the actions of another hormone called oxytocin, as throughout dating, the levels of this hormone increases, and then remains elevated throughout this late stage period. Here, oxytocin works its magic by inhibiting the amygdala, thereby reducing levels of stress, as well as levels of aggression in general. Secondly, a region at the front of your brain called the prefrontal cortex also begins to start inhibiting your amygdala. This brain area is crucial for driving sensible choices, enabling you to make logical choices, as well as to inhibit any undesirable or antisocial desires or behaviours. And interestingly, during early romantic love, this part of your brain is underactive, and therefore enables even normal people to behave in crazy ways when they've met a new or potential romantic partner. Furthermore, the prefrontal cortex also inhibits obsessive thoughts, which are of course common during early romantic love. This obsessive thinking is similar to that which occurs within the brains of people with OCD. This is a syndrome which is driven by low levels of a neurotransmitter called serotonin, and interestingly, people in the early stages of romantic love have also been found to have similar serotonin levels to people with OCD, which seemingly fuels the obsessive thinking about the person that they desire or love during this early romantic love period. Thankfully though, in addition to inhibiting your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex also suppresses these obsessive thoughts as you transition into late-stage romantic love, as these low serotonin levels also become normalized. Altogether, this therefore enables you to experience a healthy romantic attachment with your loved one, thereby lowering your propensity for behaviours which cause you to inadvertently sabotage your own relationship through controlling and possessive behaviours, and is potentially the mechanism which underlies stalking. So as we've seen, the early stages of attraction and romantic relationships are characterised by complex brain activity, which generates a potent cocktail of pleasure and reward. However, this also causes the activation of fear and aggression systems, thereby generating feelings of stress and anxiety, as well as reducing the influence of self-control areas of the brain. Collectively, this generates the obsessional thinking and reduced impulse control that typically characterises the early stages of romantic relationships. Consequently, it has been hypothesised by Drs. Reed Meloy and Helen Fisher that stalking may therefore constitute a deviant and extreme pattern of courtship and coupling, a pattern that is generated by pathological levels of activity within these exact brain mechanisms. Here, Meloy and Fisher propose that this pathology may therefore lie within the early romantic love system, which they call the brain's attachment system. This may also explain why cluster B personality disorders are common amongst predatory and obsessive stalkers, due to their avoidant or obsessive attachment styles. Consequently, when someone with a pathological attachment style feels sexual or romantic attraction, this may therefore lead to abnormal or prolonged activation of these brain mechanisms, thereby increasing the risk of stalking.